Welcome, lovers! I don't know what I'm doing, but you probably already knew that, and welcome back! So for the past few days, I have been binge-watching H2O Just Add Water like I did when I first found it, and like I've done a couple times since then. And as an obsessed mermaid lover since I was a very small child, you can imagine how much I love that show. Yes, it's a teen drama, so it's overdramatic and really cheesy, and a lot of it is a little cringy, but the show itself is still pretty good, especially the actual lore and magic and mermaid parts. That being said, there are a lot of questions that I have with the show. It's a good show, but there's a lot of stuff not right with it. And since I've been binge watching it, and as of yesterday started rewatching Mako Mermaids, which personally I don't think is as good. It's an interesting concept. I love that they flipped the whole idea and include a merman, but I just don't like it as much. Beside the point, as I was saying, since I've been watching them and I've been thinking so much about it, I figured I might as well make a video talking about all the questions I have and all the things that are not quite right with it. Obviously, for anybody who hasn't seen this, spoilers ahead. The whole video is just going to be spoilers. So if you're not prepared for that, you can come back later. The first question I have is why they never really explored their powers. Like, obviously they can do the basic, Emma can freeze things, Ricky can heat things up, Cleo can move water. You okay? Are you alright, baby girl? Come on. There you go. Are you alright? Did you hurt yourself? Oh, you're so cute. So we all know that, but they never actually tried to see how much they could do. Like, granted, there is only so much you can do with Ricky's power with the heat, because you can only heat things up so much. And like, yes, it evaporates water. Yes, if you do it enough, you can make fire, as was expressed with Charlotte. And then when the weather stuff came in, she had lightning. All that kind of stuff makes sense. And it makes sense that they wouldn't do much more with that because, at least as far as I've been capable of thinking so far, I may change my mind later, there isn't a whole lot more she could do with that that wouldn't be, you know, higher than a PG rating. But then there is Cleo and Emma. Like, yes, she can freeze things. Yes, she learns to control it so that she can individually freeze very small, controlled things. Makes sense. But she could also, if she controlled it enough, just make something colder without completely freezing it. I can't actually remember what her weather power was right now. But it would make sense if, like, expressed in Mako Mermaids, that she could make it like snow or sleet or anything like that that she never actually tried to do.
No, the worst thing about H2O is the fact that everyone is incredibly dense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, here's what we should do right here. And it's like, but what if we didn't? What if my plan was the greatest plan in the entire world?
Oh my god.
You just don't understand, Dimitri. I know better than anyone. What about that lady who's been a mermaid for 80 years? She's an idiot. She doesn't know anything.
I just hate the fact that they get mad at each other for things that are not their fault literally all the time.
We should stay out of it. Fuck you. We need to get up in this business. It has nothing to do with us. We're gonna kidnap this guy. Okay, but what if we didn't? What if we just left him alone?
Fucking Mako Mermaids, where it's like, he fell in the pool. It's your fault the pot is leaving.
This guy fell in the pool. He was unconscious. So you knocked him out and pushed him in? Shit, you're on your own. That's not what I said at all. Enjoy being alone. Your family's leaving. You're an asshole.
What was I saying? Right, Cleo's powers. Cleo's powers are essentially the same as waterbending from Avatar. Like, she could just pull water out of the air if she tried. Or out of people, but again, that wouldn't be PG. Like, she could make the rain not hit them while they were on their way to school, instead of, you know, having the CDC called thinking that they're sick with some unknown disease. And, like, the power of wind can turn into tornadoes. And probably hurricanes, honestly. Like, there's a lot of shit you can do with that they just never even tried. The next thing, which is my first real complaint, is getting in and out of the moon pool area. Like, obviously, they're mermaids. They can get in easily. But in the very first episode, when they fall into the room, the whole reason they have to go through the water in the first place is because they can't get back out. So, why is it that in the entire rest of the series, everyone else who can't use the tunnel or just doesn't gets in and out just fine? Like, there's no explanation. They didn't say, oh, we put a rope or a ladder or something there. And even later on in the series, people still get stuck down there. But the rest of the time, they can just get back out, no problem. Like, they did not think that through. The next thing, being the thing I'm sure a lot of us can agree on, is why the fuck did they not just tell their parents? It would have solved so many problems. Like, clearly not all of them. There's still a lot you can do, even if their parents knew. But they just decided, no, we can't trust our parents. Because obviously, if anybody knows, we're going to end up as scientific studies trapped in labs for the rest of our lives. But then they all tell their boyfriends. And never their parents. Like, I get it. 2 out of the 3 just ended up seeing it happen. You can't prevent that. But when it got to that point, and they proved that you could trust them, and that they would keep this secret, why on earth would you then not tell your parents, who are not shitty parents? They love you and want to keep you safe and have told you on a multitude of occasions that you can talk to them about anything, but still you decide to trust your boyfriend but not your family. Like, when it comes to Kim, I get not wanting to tell her. Kim is a little shit. But aside from her, the rest of their families, they would get it. They would keep the secret. Like, it's not that complicated. And then they wouldn't have gotten in trouble as much as they did with their families. Because they would know. And then you wouldn't have to hide on full moons. Your family could help you on the full moons. And then less shenanigans would happen. And on the topic of family, my next issue is fucking Kim. Like, I get having a character there for the purposes of causing issues. But you need to give them some personality trait outside of being a shitty person. Because every single episode that Kim is in, the only thing she ever does is be shitty. Like, I get it. Kids that age are hormonal and generally terrible for the most part. I get that. But having no good qualities ever reflected in the show, like, that's just infuriating. Like, I hate watching the episodes where she's a big part of it because I'm just mad the whole time. The next thing is about the moon. And for the most part, I don't have an issue with the way they reflect how the moon affects them. It makes sense, goes along with existing mermaid lore. That's fine. What I do have a problem with is when they see it and it does nothing. It doesn't happen a lot. But the main thing in my head right now is what happened with Charlotte. When she lost her powers and shit. They all saw the moon that night. All of them. Charlotte was the first to see the moon, and she acted like she was affected for a while. They got to Mako, and I'm not sure if she was supposed to still be affected or not, because she was just acting normal after that. But the other girls who also saw the moon, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Like, I get that you wanted it to be a situation of, like, them versus her, but you could still do that while having them be affected by the moon. You could have them be more aggressive than usual, or in a weird state of trance, and, like, just do the whole thing and not remember it happening later. That would have made more sense than nothing happening, you know? And now we get to people almost seeing them, which makes sense. A lot of it happens, and I understand that they can't disguise themselves like they could in Mako Mermaids because they were not born mermaids, so they don't have all the powers. That's not what bothers me. What does bother me is the one time they actually get caught in the moon pool by the scientist. When they get to the little gate thing they attach to the entrance, they don't just try to break it. Like, it's been shown to us that you can break things by freezing it multiple times. We know that things can be broken if they're heated up too much. And literally Emma broke a boat door in with her tail. So why, when they were trapped, did they not at least try to break the gate? Especially when it was shown that it could be pulled away by a small boat. Like, they could definitely have broken free on their own, and they just didn't. And as was mentioned when Eric was in here, I have a lot of issues with the way that they acted. Like, out of the three main characters, I liked Ricky the best because more often than not, she was the only one with common sense. But even then, a lot of them still made stupid decisions, blamed each other for stuff that was not their fault, got mad at each other for literally no fucking reason. And some of it is understandable because they're teenagers, and when you're hormonal, you get like that. I understand. But it happened to a degree that it was just really annoying. Like, they could have removed half of those things, and it would have been more interesting to watch and less infuriating. And then we get to Charlotte. I actually really like Charlotte. At least for the most part. Charlotte shows up. She's the new person in town. And first thing that happens is she gets splashed. So we know that she's going to be important because she gets splashed and Cleo goes and talks to her and shit. And obviously she shows an interest in Lewis. She finds him attractive, probably, or I don't even know. But from that point we realize she's going to be important. That's fine. And then she spends a lot of time just trying to get to know them. Like, she gives them a chance. Like, she wants to get to know Lewis, which, granted, that's something we can fault her for, is attempting to semi-pursue him while he was in a relationship. Which I honestly don't even know if we can blame her for, but because she strikes me as the kind of person who would want to at least befriend him if she couldn't date him because he seemed like an interesting person. But that's a little beside the point. So she comes in, she wants to befriend them, she's asking Lewis to, get to know her, which is fine. And then she gives the girls a chance as well. She wants and tries to talk to them like a normal fucking person. And instead of being rational people or not being shitty people, they just automatically hate her because she likes Lewis. And then when it gets to the point that Lewis and Cleo aren't dating anymore, which is not very long after that, she's like, now it's not a problem because they're not dating, which makes sense, that's how that works. They just get even more mad at her. Like, I get being uncomfortable with it, but hating her guts over it is dumb. And up until that point, it makes sense. It really does. I understand you would feel that way. Fine. But most human beings would be able to get past that to realize she is a human being and she doesn't know what all happened in your relationship, and it's not her fault that she likes somebody. But they just continue to blindly hate her. And then when she does start getting close to Lewis, they decide that it's about them being mermaids when it's not. Don't get me wrong, I know it was a scapegoat, but it eventually became that's actually what they thought was happening. And the only reason that it got to the point where that was what was happening was because they kept pushing it. Like, they kept being terrible to her and pushing her and being rude and acting uncomfortably secretive to the point that it's like, you're obviously keeping some sort of big secret. Not to mention how completely fucking reckless they are with their powers sometimes. Like, Cleo attacking her sister with water, and them doing stuff to Charlotte with their powers before she knows mermaids exist. And it's frustrating for how much they want to keep their fucking secret. They're all really fucking reckless with it. And then when she finally does actually have an interest in what the fuck is going on, it's because she found a picture of her grandmother in Cleo's room. Of course she's gonna be interested. And even then, she doesn't think that it's a mermaid situation. She wants to know why they have a picture of her grandmother, which is reasonable. And like they gave her a weird explanation that sort of makes sense. That's fair. That would work fine. But you would think that they wouldn't leave all that shit out. Like, granted, they couldn't have known she would have come in and looked through their shit. That is not a good thing, obviously. There's a lot of stuff she did of her own accord that, like, was shitty. A lot of it was arrived to by her being treated terribly the entire time, but some of it is very much just she needs to be responsible for her own actions. I get that. And they couldn't have known she was going to come visit that day and take stuff, trying to find stuff about her grandma. However, Cleo lives with Kim. It has been shown to us on multiple occasions that Kim loves to go in her room without permission and rifle through her shit. She found her diary about being a mermaid and believed it then. So, who decided it was a good idea to leave all this stuff about mermaids out where someone could see it? And another thing, when she asks about the necklace, you know, the thing that her grandma had that was made specifically for her and her two friends, I get that Lewis was like panicked and like, oh, it was probably something everybody had, but when she could have like come back and been like, no, that's not something everybody has. What's going on? They could easily just have said, yeah, it came with the rest of the shit we found, because that would make sense, because it was stuff about her grandma. And then when it got to the point where she found the film where you could see her grandmother as a mermaid, instead of continuing to lie to her, they could have just all gotten together as a group, sucked it up that they don't like her, and just been like, this is what's going on. She's obviously not the kind of person who would tell everyone about it. Like, even from the perspective of someone who doesn't like her, it's obvious she's not that kind of person. Granted, she would be like, I want to be a mermaid too. This is like, because she feels like it's a right of like heritage. And they could argue all they want. She'd probably do it anyway. That's fine. But if anything, that would make it more of a guarantee that she would keep the secret, is if she was part of it. You know? And then when she did become part of it, they just, for the most part, they refused to actually try and help. Like, they tried to help, where they're like, if you have any questions, ask. But then they treated her like she was incapable. And then when she was still learning, like when she was trying to figure out what her power was, Ricky mocked her. So by the time they actually reached a point that they considered actually trying to help her, it was too late. She was like, I know you guys fucking hate me. Why should I give a shit what you say to me? Like, if you treat somebody that terribly for that long, it's gonna happen. Like, they couldn't just fucking coexist. And then there's the everyday stuff that's like, what? Like the fact that they always have shaved legs, but they can't get their skin wet to shave their legs because they grow tails. Or the fact that they can't wash their hands after using the bathroom without getting a tail. Or what happens when somebody hugs them and they're all sweaty instead of just wet? Does that change them into mermaids? I feel like that would change them into mermaids. Then again, that might have been addressed in the episode where Lewis kept spraying them with different variants of degrees of water. That, I don't remember if that was addressed there, but I feel like it would still turn them. There's like a lot of everyday stuff, like little things like that. Like if you go to use a water fountain, when it like hits the thing, it sprays out. So they can't use water fountains anymore. There's just a lot of things that I'm like, wish they would have addressed that. And then it came to the whole waterproofing situation where Lewis came up with that spray that was kind of like sunscreen, but they could get wet and not like turn into mermaids. But it made them turn super duper red, like they had a sunburn or something. Why is it that after that happened, he never tried to do it again? Like he never continued that research. He just gave up. Like that is a very minor setback for being able to live and touch water. So shouldn't you do trials to see if you can just take away that one effect? Like that was the only downside. There's also the fact that Miss Chatham kind of disappeared in the last season. Granted, the last season sucked. Like, almost the entire season was just filler. And then, like, the last portion was the main thing, which was the meteor thing, which made no sense. Not to mention the fact that they replaced Emma with somebody else who had a very bland and pointless romance. Like, almost the whole of the last season was just like watching filler. I can't actually watch it anymore. I watched it through the first time and I barely got through it then. I couldn't even watch the first episode yesterday. And then there's one more complaint I have, specifically about Charlotte. She felt like she was meant to be a mermaid. She was a really good mermaid. She had all the powers because I'm assuming it sort of went through her genes even though her grandmother wasn't a mermaid anymore. So why, after she got dropped in the moon pool and lost her powers, did she not at least attempt to go back in the next full moon? Like, if she wanted to be a mermaid so badly, you'd think she'd have at least tried, right? Like, I kind of wish she did that. So yeah, that's a lot of my issues with H2O Just Add Water. I talk about Mako Mermaids too, but since I just started rewatching it, not a lot of it's in my brain yet. But I guess I might do one about that if I come up with some for that. So yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, that's perfectly okay and perfectly understandable, but hopefully I'll see you in the next video anyway. So until then, I hope your day and or night is just as lovely as you are. Bye-bye. Are you a fish? 'Cause I would catch you any day.